Two-Face here, back with another reaction video. This time I'm reacting to Black Saturday Nuclear War on Autopilot, but the Cuban Missile Crisis Day 12 by Time Ghost History. Now, if you haven't seen my reaction to the other episodes in this series, I suggest you check them out before you check this one out. So, and always these are always being brilliantly, if I can just get the words out, brilliantly presented by Indy Nidell. So, and the usual disclaimer that when I react to anything historical, if I don't show so much as what is qualified as a proper reaction, it's probably because it's obvious I don't know much about the subject on hand. If I do know anything, or I might have any useful input, or any input, I most likely will pause the video and add it, or most likely ask any curious questions, which hopefully will be answered in the comment section below. So the link to the original video will be in the description down below. Please go and subscribe to Time Ghost History, check out their content, support their channel, and without further ado, let's get this up on screen and let's see what happens in this episode.
Day 12. Murphy's Law says that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Now, that dates back to an engineering meeting in 1877.
Wow.
But another pretty cool early variant of that is magician Neville Maskelyne's note.
I wonder who... Was it actually named... I know this is probably a dumb question, but was it named after someone called Murphy, or had Murphy in their name, or was it just completely random to say Murphy's Law?
From 1908 on the difficulty of performing magic tricks. It is an experience common to all men to find that, on any special occasion, such as the production of a magical effect for the first time in public, everything that can go wrong will go wrong. In October 1962, both the US and the USSR are trying magic tricks involving nuclear weapons on a massive scale, and on the 27th of October, it seems like almost everything that can go wrong does go wrong. This is Time Ghost with the Cuban Missile Crisis. I'm Indy Nidell. Yesterday, Chairman of the Soviet Council of Ministers Nikita Khrushchev offered the U.S. an olive branch in the form of a trade-off, removing Soviet nuclear missiles from Cuba for guaranteed sovereignty of Cuba. American President John F. Kennedy was once again seriously considering invading Cuba, and near the American naval blockade line around the island, 2 Soviet nuclear-armed submarines were forced to surface and surrender to the U.S. Navy after their batteries ran out. The Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union Presidium wake up to some alarming telegram from Cuba, sent by Ambassador Alexeyev to Khrushchev and Defense Minister Marshal Malinovsky. In F. Castro's opinion, the intervention is almost inevitable and will occur in approximately 24 to 72 hours. Castro demands that the Soviets make clear to the U.S. that the missiles belong to them and not the Cubans, to hopefully deter the U.S. from invading. But he also demands that the Soviets make public their alliance with Cuba, which they have not done. He seems to be wavering somewhere between morbid panic and suicidal euphoria. The Czechoslovakian ambassador reports, if Soviet Ambassador Alexeyev confirms this information during the night hours, we will give the order to burn all classified materials except for the enciphered data, which we will destroy last. At the same time, I will order the emergency measures for informing and organizing our citizens as per the emergency plan. The Chinese embassy reports, Castro is firm. Even if Cuba were to be wiped out by a possible nuclear war, as Castro said, imperialism would be closer to facing its demise, and global socialism would arrive sooner. The Presidium is also in disarray. As they meet this morning, Khrushchev starts out by wondering if this whole thing wasn't maybe a mistake after all. They decide to revisit that issue at a later date. They have also received word from UN General Secretary U Thant that they need to publicly acknowledge the existence of the missiles to not further worsen the situation. They decide to make a public statement admitting that the missiles are there, and they will remove them if the U.S. removes its missiles in Turkey and Pakistan. Khrushchev leaves the meeting to dictate the public letter, which will first be transmitted to the U.S. Embassy in Moscow and to Uttant. Malinovsky immediately telegraphs orders to agricultural specialist Pavlov, aka General Pliev, to dial back his troop activities on Cuba and show restraint.
Wow.
Stop all work on deployment of R-12 and R-14. You are aggravating the United Nations. Camouflage everything carefully. Work only at night.
Wow.
We categorically confirm that you are prohibited from using nuclear weapons from missiles, FKR, Luna, and aircraft without orders from Moscow. Meanwhile, in the White House, XCOM is meeting with the president again to find a response to the latest developments. They talk about intercepts and surveillance missions when President Kennedy receives a new cable. He reads it aloud.
Okay.
Premier Khrushchev told President Kennedy yesterday to withdraw offensive weapons from Cuba if the United States would do its rockets from Turkey. He didn't. Oh, he's read by both of the associations. Put it out so far. The Reuters said the same thing. He did. He didn't really say that, did he? He may not be putting out another letter paper. What is our, but anyway, they got this clear about how they, let's just go on then. Are you finished there or something? We want to tell you about what? The air? That wasn't in the letter we received, was it? I read it pretty carefully. Read that way. Well, therefore, is he supposedly putting out a letter he's written me or putting out a statement? Putting out a letter he wrote to you. Let's just listen how you are. Is it a different statement? So, I think we better get, we should check and sure that the letter that's coming in on the ticker is the letter that we received last night.
The confusion is total. Later, Defense Secretary McNamara complains,
How can we negotiate with somebody
I admit, I know it's because I don't know much about the subject on hand, but how that was read, that conversation, I don't know if it's just me, but I found it quite confusing.
changes the deal before we even get a chance to reply and announce it publicly, the deal before we receive it.
Now, remember that those missiles in Turkey are obsolete and scheduled to be dismantled anyway, as are those in Pakistan, but no one's taking notice of that part of the offer.
Wow.
It's not as important. You see, the problem is that they don't want to get any of their NATO allies upset by giving them the feeling that they're hanging them out to dry. Pakistan is not a NATO ally. They take a break. McNamara heads off to the Pentagon, and President Kennedy goes back to the residence. At 11:45, McNamara calls from the Pentagon. They have a new problem. A U-2 spy plane has gone missing over Alaska and flown into Russian airspace. The flight has nothing whatsoever to do with the crisis. It's supposed to be a routine flight to measure lingering radioactive fallout over the North Pole after the thermonuclear test over Nova Zemlya, which we mentioned in Day Zero. Despite this being a super modern airplane, in 1962 there's no GPS, and radar navigation is not possible over the North Pole. Instead, the U-2's pilot by using the stars the same way Magellan and Columbus did. The pilot of this particular U-2 has gotten confused by an unusual amount of northern lights and is now 1,000 miles off course, 300 miles into Russian airspace.
Wow.
Also remember that U.S. Strategic Air Command is still at DEFCON 2, the defense readiness stage right before imminent nuclear war. To make the situation worse, the Russians have scrambled MiG fighter jets to shoot down the U-2. In response, instead of informing the White House, Air Command have scrambled their F-102 fighter jets to protect the U-2. One of those jets is armed only with a tactical nuclear missile.
Wow.
But since this is the gift that keeps on giving, there's more. Instead of interrupting all upcoming flights, Air Command has let the next scheduled U-2 go up over the North Pole for its flight. Only after 90 minutes have passed do they get the idea of informing the Pentagon, who immediately inform McNamara. McNamara is understandably furious. What if the Soviets misunderstand all of this as the initiation of nuclear war? What if the F-102 pilot fires his nuclear missile by mistake? President Kennedy is notably cooler when he's informed, reportedly wryly muttering, "There's always some son of a bitch who doesn't get the word." In the end, the pilot of the U-2 runs out of fuel, but glides back into U.S. airspace and ditches his plane on a private airfield, coming out unscathed but deeply shaken. Kennedy goes back to the XCOM meeting to discuss what to do about invasion plans and which letter from Khrushchev to respond to. It doesn't take long for another worrying message regarding another U-2 mission to come in. This time it is relevant to the crisis, though. A U-2 piloted by Major Rudolph Anderson Jr., one of the most experienced U-2 pilots, has gone missing. Now things are getting too hot, so they decide they can't wait for a decision on how to deal with their NATO allies regarding the missiles in Turkey. Instead, they decide to ignore the Khrushchev letter from today and reply to the letter from yesterday and accept guaranteeing the territorial integrity of Cuba in exchange for a monitored withdrawal of the missiles. They then start to look at when they have to take military action in case the Soviets don't accept the deal. Low-altitude flights have revealed that the Cuban surface-to-air missile sites are being taken over by Soviet troops, and they are much more disciplined than the revolutionary forces of Cuba. In fact, all of the flybys today have had flak fired at them from much closer than any day so far. There is a sense of urgency from the Joint Chiefs of Staff to strike now.
What is the rush about this other than the fact that we have to make the strike? I think the rush is what do we do? The U-2. The U-2 was shot down. The fire against our low-altitude surveillance. Shut down? Yes, Raj just said it was not shut down. Pilot killed? Yes, this was shot down over Spanish, which is right near a U-2 site in eastern Cuba. And the pilot's body is in the plane. Apparently, this was the SAM site that actually had the active fruit cake radar. All tied in very closely. Well, this is much an escalation by them, isn't it? Yes, exactly. And this relates to the timing. I think we can defer an air attack on Cuba until Wednesday or Thursday, but only if we continue our surveillance and fire against anything that fires against the surveillance aircraft, and only if we maintain a tight blockade in this interim period. If we're willing to do those two things, I think we can defer the air attack until Wednesday or Thursday and take time to go to NATO. And how do we explain the effect of this Khrushchev message last night with their decision to review their previous orders, the change in orders we both had flak and a SAM site operator? How do we, that must how do we interpret this? I don't know how to interpret it. They feel they must respond now if the whole world knows where we're flying. Yeah, I raised the question we tell you to get the SAM site. We think we have every reason to believe that we know the SAM site. 2 days ago. How can we send a U-2 fellow over there tomorrow unless we take out all the SAM sites? This is exactly the problem. I don't think we can. Can we the pilot? Yes. And it's on the ground. Not on the ground. The record's on the ground. Pilot's in.
While drafting the letter to Khrushchev, the conversation keeps returning to airstrikes and invasion. Off and on, there are expressions of shock and incredulity that the Soviets have actually shot down a U.S. plane. It seems the reality of the situation is finally sinking in. Thing is, that's the same sentiment that exists on the Soviet side. Although the commander of Operation Anadyr, General Pliev, was acting as ordered when he shot down the U-2, and Malinovsky knows this, he will soon cable him. We believe that you were too hasty in shooting down the U.S. U-2 reconnaissance plane. At the time, an agreement was emerging to avert, by peaceful means, an attack on Cuba. In the recording of the XCOM meeting, the Kennedy brothers both leave the room at about the same time. It is believed that this is the moment when they privately agree that Robert Kennedy will meet Soviet ambassador to the U.S. Dobrynin that same evening and propose a secret deal to remove the Turkish missiles to resolve the crisis. The conditions are that this deal never becomes public, that the Americans get 5 months to do it, and it's based solely on JFK's word of honor. When RFK meets with Dobrynin at 7:15 p.m., Dobrynin will report back that Bobby Kennedy looked dead tired, like someone who had not slept for a long, long time. Before that, at XCOM, President Kennedy sums up his feelings about any further steps toward invasion at this point.
Very well indeed,
What neither the Americans nor the Soviets know, and many of them will never know, is that while all this political talk is going on board Soviet submarine B-59 in the Caribbean on this very day, someone is actually about to fire a nuclear weapon to launch Armageddon.
Wow.
Join us tomorrow on day 13 when we conclude this series and see exactly how close the world came to total destruction. And click subscribe to never miss our content. Good night and good luck.
And that'll do it. This has been another interesting video. Wow. So it's nice to see. It's basically, it's nice. It's refreshing to see that the two sides can come to some sort of agreement. Whether it be followed through or not is to be seen. So. And it's hard to tell what will happen with this submarine that Indy Nidal was talking about. So don't know how much to put, what else to say about it, but so anyway, if you like this reaction, please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next